Hello and welcome everyone to the Party Animal Podcast, episode number 10, Office Christmas Party. I'm Thomas.
And I'm Luna, and today we're starting a discussion on, well, what might be the most complex and psychologically charged event on the professional calendar?
I think fraught is the perfect word for it.
It really is.
We're talking about the Office Christmas Party. And calling it just a party feels like, I don't know, a massive understatement.
Oh, completely. It's so much more than just a celebration.
We're really looking at this as an annual ritual. It's this moment of symbolic pause, a kind of mandated break from the usual routine of deadlines, meetings, and all those professional responsibilities that, take up the rest of the year.
That's a really important distinction. Think about just the scene itself, the physical transformation of the workplace,
right,
and what that signals to everybody. I mean, for 11 months of the year, the whole environment is about structure, it's about schedules, and a certain kind of professional restraint.
And then almost overnight, everything changes. Your desk, which usually has a laptop and stacks of paperwork, is suddenly holding a tray of maybe some questionable canapes.
Yeah, and some slightly sticky seasonal decor.
Exactly. And those conference rooms, the ones that are usually for, serious agendas and quarterly reviews.
Or maybe even disciplinary actions.
Yeah. Suddenly they transition. They become spaces that echo with laughter, with actual conversation, and maybe, just maybe, some slightly questionable music choices from the 80s.
That shift, the physical and emotional shift, is what signals this temporary relaxation of the rules.
And what's crucial for you, our listener, is to really understand what that temporary relaxation actually means. We're not here to just give etiquette tips.
No, not at all.
We want to explore the layered dynamics, the complexities, and most importantly, the long-term professional implications of this really unique event.
Our mission here is to help you understand the unwritten rules, the implicit power structures, and really how to decode what this event truly means for your standing in the company.
Because the impressions formed here, they're often more lasting than those made during a quarterly performance review, aren't they?
They are. They get carried forward, and they subtly shape how people see your trust and your judgment.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with this foundational idea that the event has a dual nature. It's, advertised as a celebration, yes, but organizationally, culturally, it is absolutely a test.
It is a test, and it's one that management often doesn't even realize they're administering. So let's look at the celebratory side first, the reflection and continuity part.
Okay.
At a high level, the party functions as a symbolic closing of the year. You look at the business calendar, it's all quarters, sprints, projects, and this gives everyone permission to just stop the forward momentum for a minute.
It's a necessary psychological break, isn't it? A collective deep breath that kind of validates the shared struggle. It's a time for reflection on what you've accomplished, and maybe even more importantly, on the challenges you've overcome. You might be standing there with someone you've barely spoken to all year, and you can actually say, wow, remember the pressure of that launch back in July? We made it through that.
And that shared narrative is incredibly powerful. It creates this vital story of resilience. It's also a moment to see how goals might have shifted over the last 12 months. But what's fascinating is how the event is seen so differently depending on an employee's tenure.
That difference in perspective is so critical. So tell me a bit more about that, because their motivation for even showing up must be completely different.
It is entirely different. It's rooted in where they are in their professional integration. So let's start with the new hires.
Okay.
For them, this event isn't just a fun night. It is an active and often pretty high-stakes opportunity to integrate themselves into the organization's social fabric. They're observing, they're learning the informal communication structure.
So they're kind of performing reconnaissance. They're trying to figure out the real internal social map, which is, often very different from the official org chart.
That's right. They're trying to find out who really talks to whom, who is respected outside of their formal title, and what counts as acceptable casual behavior.
So they feel like they have to show up, they need to make an appearance to show they're committed, that they want to be part of the company's collective life. It's a networking exercise, but one that probably comes with a lot of anxiety.
A significant amount. They are trying to establish social capital. Now, on the other hand, you have the long-standing employees, the veterans who have seen this all before.
Right.
For them, it's a familiar ritual. They see it not as an integration opportunity, but as a marker of organizational time. It reinforces for them that the company is stable, that it's enduring.
And I imagine that sense of stability lets them approach it with a lot more ease. Or maybe even a little bit of weariness, because they already know the routine And, crucially, they know the pitfalls to avoid.
Precisely. They understand the implicit contract of the evening. They're less focused on building new social capital and more on just maintaining the relationships they already have or simply enjoying the symbolic reward.
So while it seems like this wonderful unifying moment on the surface, we have to talk about the unspoken complexities, the big caveat that underpins the whole thing.
Which is that beneath that festive atmosphere, the lights, the music, the slightly too sweet punch, the same workplace dynamics are absolutely still there.
This is why we shift from calling it a celebration to calling it a cultural test.
It's the persistence of those power dynamics. Hierarchy doesn't just vanish because someone's wearing a novelty sweater.
No, the boss is still the boss.
Exactly. The reporting lines still exist, and the ability to influence careers hasn't changed at all. This is why employee expectations for the event are so incredibly varied.
They really are. Some people genuinely look forward to it. They see it as a decompression chamber, a chance to unwind. But others, and I think this is a growing number of people, they approach it very cautiously. They are acutely aware that the power dynamics and the potential for deep professional awkwardness are all still there, just kind of disguised by tinsel.
That cautious approach often comes from a preference for really clear professional boundaries. The research we've seen suggests this relaxed environment isn't universally comfortable. For some, taking away the structure is liberating.
Sure, they feel free to show a bit more of their personality outside of their cubicle.
Right. But I wonder if that liberation for one person comes at the expense of comfort for another.
That's a great point. For people who prefer those clear, solid boundaries between their professional and personal lives, blurring those lines is just profoundly uncomfortable.
It becomes an invasion of their personal preference. If you're someone who works best with structure and defined roles, being thrown into a highly informal, sometimes chaotic environment, especially with alcohol, can create a genuine sense of dread.
So the psychological cost for them outweighs any perceived professional benefit.
Absolutely. Which means that organizational inclusivity has to be a major consideration here, and it goes way beyond just, having vegetarian options.
Right. It's about managing an environment where all these different comfort levels are forced to coexist and respecting that.
Exactly. The organization has to realize this isn't just about providing food and drinks. It's about managing a dynamic where social pressure can be immense. If showing up is seen, even implicitly, as mandatory for your career, then the party can actually become a source of stress, not appreciation.
And it could end up marginalizing people who can't attend for family reasons, health reasons, or just personal preference.
And that leads us perfectly into the next major dynamic, which is the shifting roles and the inevitable testing of professional boundaries that happens in this kind of setting.
It's a real crucible for organizational norms.
Let's start with the positive side of that shift, which is always highlighted as the main benefit, the humanizing of our colleagues.
Yeah. As conversations unfold, those strict workplace roles really do start to break down. And often in a good way. You see the person from the finance department who's usually all business suddenly laughing about something their dog did. Or the really quiet data analyst talking excitedly about their family's holiday traditions.
And it's those small anecdotal disclosures that are so powerful. They counter the biases we might have about people based only on their job title.
Right. Colleagues who normally only interact through very formal emails are now talking about hobbies and family and their holiday plans.
And what that does, fundamentally, is it shifts the relationship. It goes from being purely transactional, I need this report from you, to being intrinsically human. I recognize you as a whole person.
And this isn't just some feel-good fluff. There's a real measurable future implication here. It fosters organizational resilience.
The benefit is that these connections build empathy and understanding. You no longer see that person just as the bottleneck in accounts receivable.
Right.
You see them as a three-dimensional person who has a complex life that influences how they work.
And that empathy is a resource that can really help collaboration long after the party is over. 2 weeks later, you're facing a huge deadline, and you might remember that the person you need help from mentioned a sick parent or a big family commitment.
And that small piece of information subtly changes how you communicate. It shifts it from an aggressive demand to an empathetic request.
And that change, that reduction in friction, is a major return on investment for the company.
It is. We should probably expand on some of the other specific advantages that come from this humanizing process because they really show why companies see this as an essential expense despite all the risks.
Absolutely. The material we looked at, points to some really tangible benefits. First, and maybe most obviously, it just boosts morale. It reinforces employee appreciation. It's a visible, collective thank you.
It's also a great way to encourage that interpersonal connection and teamwork that can get lost when everyone is just, heads down in their own siloed departments.
Yeah, you're physically connecting people who might otherwise only talk through Slack or a project management tool.
And that enforced connection naturally leads to better communication across departments. If you spend 20 minutes talking to someone from marketing about, I don't know, their favorite obscure football team,
Right.
you might feel a lot more comfortable just picking up the phone to talk to them later instead of sending a stiff, formal email.
The friction point for that cross-functional communication is just lowered dramatically.
This is especially true when we look at interactions with leadership. They often get profoundly humanized. Managers and supervisors seem less formal, and the hierarchy, for a few hours at least, feels visibly reduced.
Oh, for sure. When the director of operations is waiting in the same line for food, or the CEO trips over a decorative plant, it kind of levels the playing field for a moment.
And this reduction in hierarchy is so valuable for junior staff. It lets them see the people running the company as approachable individuals, not just distant, intimidating authority figures.
That transparency, even if it's just for a night, can build a lot of foundational trust.
It creates these shared experiences that genuinely strengthen the company culture.
Right.
Provided, and this is the huge caveat, that the leadership behaves appropriately. That humanizing effect is a double-edged sword.
Which is the massive transition we need to make right now, navigating the informality. Because as good as humanizing colleagues is, the setting itself introduces this central, persistent challenge, especially around professional boundaries.
And that challenge is simply that the informality creates all these situations that require incredibly careful, real-time judgment. The written rules of the office dress code, meeting procedures, they're all suspended.
And suddenly the unwritten, implicit rules of social decorum become way more important.
Yes. The risks that people point out are very real. The most discussed one is always blurred professional boundaries. What you say in a formal meeting is governed by clear, understood structure.
Right.
But what you say after 2 glasses of wine, maybe talking about your manager's questionable decision-making, is governed only by your personal restraint.
And this is where the risk of misunderstandings or discomfort gets amplified. The context shift changes the social contract. A joke that's fine in the office might be seen as inappropriate in a social setting, or vice versa.
The social contract shifts, and not everyone shifts successfully with it. And that can lead to professional missteps that you can't easily take back.
And what about the pressure? The social pressure to attend or participate? That's a significant consequence, too.
It is. If participation is seen as a mandatory step for career visibility, even if HR never says that out loud, it disproportionately excludes people who have legitimate reasons not to go.
Absolutely. Those reasons could be cultural, religious, family commitments, health issues, or just a profound discomfort with large, loud crowds.
And if the company doesn't provide other ways for those people to get visibility or network, they're effectively penalizing a segment of their workforce for maintaining their own personal boundaries.
Which results in really uneven professional experiences among employees. The extroverted, socially adept person who thrives in that environment gets a huge advantage.
They do. They can work the room, make connections, and they benefit disproportionately. Meanwhile, the quieter, maybe technically brilliant but socially cautious employee might feel completely alienated.
Or worse, they feel like they have to put on a performance, to be someone they're not, just to satisfy this perceived requirement.
And that creates an environment where social performance is valued over technical competence, which can be really detrimental to the long-term health of the company.
It effectively becomes a high-stakes, uncompensated social performance review. And the consequences of failure are lasting. Which brings us to that lasting impact and what the party really reveals about a company's culture.
This is the core of it, really. The power of individual choice. Every single person at that party has to make a series of real-time decisions about how they're going to engage, and those decisions are highly visible.
You see these varied approaches, and they're really strategic choices, whether people realize it at the time or not. There's what we could call the moderation choice. The employee who engages briefly, maybe has one drink, make sure they say hello to a few key people, especially leaders, and then leaves early.
That employee is making a calculated decision. They've shown their face, they've participated, but they've successfully maintained their personal comfort and, crucially, their professional restraint. They're managing their reputation by controlling their exposure time.
Then you have the full embrace employee. They stay much longer, they're fully in the celebration, maybe they're the first one on the dance floor, they're having deeper, more personal conversations.
They're willing to accept a higher risk of a misstep for what they see as a higher reward. Greater social integration, cementing relationships, building that shared history. They're investing in social capital, but their risk threshold is much higher.
But here's the crucial, inescapable insight that everyone needs to remember. Individual behavior during this time influences long-term professional perception and reputation.
Yes. The informality is temporary, but the impressions formed during those few hours do not just disappear when the lights come up.
They're carried forward. They subtly influence future interactions about opportunities, trust, reliability, and professional judgment.
This is why those small behavioral choices matter so much. They're viewed through the lens of character, not just temporary holiday spirit.
It's not just about avoiding a huge public catastrophe, like getting into an argument with your boss.
Oh, no.
It's about every small decision. How you handle your level of inebriation, how you interact with a junior colleague, how you address someone in a moment of informality. These things reveal fundamental character.
They absolutely reveal character, and that brings us to the unique and amplified role of leadership during this event. Their conduct sets the visible, explicit tone for the entire party.
And their behavior is scrutinized with disproportionate intensity.
Yes, it is.
Right.
If the management team is excessively careless, if they display a lack of control, or if they seem to forget all professional standards, that sends a very clear and often very negative signal to every employee.
So their relaxed demeanor is actually the most intense test of their professional restraint and judgment.
It is. Employees are watching how leaders manage their own boundaries, especially with alcohol, physical contact, and casual conversation. If leaders demand high standards during the workday, but then behave recklessly at the party, that hypocrisy undermines trust in the whole organization.
And the potential damage is cascading, isn't it? Their relaxed behavior, if it crosses a line, it basically gives tacit authorization for others to do the same.
Precisely. If the CEO is telling inappropriate jokes or being overly familiar with staff, that specific behavior instantly becomes the new unspoken baseline for acceptable conduct in that company's culture.
They're establishing the lower bound of acceptable professional conduct just by their example.
And that, I think, is the final cultural takeaway we have to address. The office Christmas party is so much more than just a gathering. It fundamentally reveals the underlying implicit culture of the organization, for better or for worse.
Because it's the one moment when the formal organizational rules relax. And that relaxation allows the true nature of interpersonal relationships, the raw, unedited dynamic between people, to surface.
The lasting impact isn't in the decorations or the playlist. It's entirely in how people choose to engage with one another when the formal constraints are intentionally lifted. It provides a unique window into the social structure.
This is where that core realization comes from. It really synthesizes everything we've talked about.
Indeed. We should reflect on that central observation. It says, a celebration does not change who we are. It reveals how we treat one another when the rules relax and the spotlight shifts.
That statement holds so much weight. A celebration doesn't change us. It doesn't magically transform us into better or worse people.
No, it simply provides the social vacuum for our true operating system, our core values, our default behavior, to run unmasked.
Think about the depth of that. When the formal rules relax, the mandatory professional politeness that shields everyday interactions might just vanish. What's left is the core respect, or lack thereof, that colleagues genuinely have for each other.
And the shifting spotlight means the focus moves away from efficiency and deliverables and squarely onto character and judgment.
So if a company's culture is genuinely healthy and built on mutual respect, the party just reinforces those bonds. People feel comfortable being themselves, and the connections strengthen the whole organization.
But if the foundation is shaky, if the culture is fundamentally toxic, relaxing the rules doesn't create camaraderie. It just gives people license to be even more toxic.
It becomes a powerful diagnostic tool for the health of the entire workplace.
It shows management exactly what happens when they aren't actively enforcing structure. It is the annual moment of truth.
And it requires awareness, consideration, and profound respect from everyone.
And that awareness is precisely what we hope you carry forward.
Okay, so for our listeners, we want you to take this thought with you. Think beyond the overt mishaps, the things everyone remembers the next day, the spilled drinks, the bad karaoke. Think instead about what specific, subtle behaviors you've observed at relaxed work events that truly reveal the underlying culture.
What specific, quiet actions when the guard was down demonstrated genuine respect and consideration, or conversely, a profound lack of it? That's the real lesson here, because those details are the building blocks of professional reputation.
We absolutely want to hear your thoughts on this. Please share your opinions and experiences in the comments section below. We read every single one of them, and your insights help drive future conversations.
We truly appreciate you taking this journey with us and applying this level of critical thinking to what might seem like a mundane event.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Party Animal Podcast. Make sure to check back in for future episodes, and please click that like button, turn on notifications, and subscribe to help this podcast bring more awareness to others while enjoying an amazing time minus the pitfalls.
Be safe out there.